Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Edu-Chat Series. So today is a Saturday. I hope everyone is well rested after a tiring week down ahead. And today we will be speaking to someone very special that will be joining us today. She, I guess we don't we do not really have to introduce her in respective towards all of achievement that she has been doing over in Malaysia. And I guess a lot of you are very familiar with her. And before we actually start on towards this, a little bit of sneak preview with regards to what's going to happen next week, right? So for those of you who are really aware in our Education Summit Facebook group page, so we will be having our Series 2 Education Summit 2020, which will be happening on the 22nd and the 23rd of August next week. So we will be featuring 16 new speakers that will be discussing all about education, education solutions, education ideas, as well as all of everything that is regarding to education. So for those of you out there who has just joined us in the Education Summit, we welcome you. And we hope that you have gained some insight through the past speakers that has been already in our Facebook page, right? Okay, so to cut this short, before introducing our speaker for today, I would just like to give a couple of introduction with regards to our speaker or educator that will be coming on board shortly in a while. So her name is teacher Tham. So she's currently the group CEO and founder of the EdVenture group. So EdVenture group, as well as she owns two international schools, which a lot of you may be very familiar with, which is the Dwi Emas International Schools and also Sri Emas International School as well. So what I really love about this character or this educator that we are going to be speaking to is that she brings a very fresh approach to education. And what I really love about her is that she keeps things very real, and she hopes only for the best to her students. And in bringing so, she tries to do whatever she can to really bring the best quality of education through dynamic and interactive learning methods as well. So a little bit about her. I guess she has been teaching for close to about 30 years. And she and her team are paving the way for education in the 21st century. So she set off foot in the education line ever since when she was in high school, teaching English, right? So I wouldn't want to bore you with much more of the details. I would just like to introduce our guest speaker for the day, teacher Tham. Welcome, teacher.
Hi, hello, Jay. Glad to be on board here. Yeah, because I know you're doing an amazing job, getting a lot of information to educators and parents out there. So, yeah, phenomenal.
Right.
Looking forward
Thank you,
to the
teacher
summit
Tham.
next week as well.
Yeah. So by the way, for those of you who are watching, Teacher N is currently, she's a very dedicated educator. And why do I say so is that she's currently rushing down on her journey all the way down to KL from North Malaysia, but she still manages to squeeze some of her time to feature in our education summit. And thank you so much, Teacher N, for your time to join us in the education summit.
You're most welcome.
Right.
Definitely. It's a
Right.
pleasure.
Okay, so Teacher Ann, let's get right into it. So a little bit more about Teacher Ann. Could you, for those of the audiences that are watching right now that may not have heard of Teacher Ann, would you be able to give a very quick introduction on who is Teacher Ann and what Teacher Ann is currently doing in the education line as well?
Okay. Mainly I've been a teacher, right? I've been a teacher for this is the 34th, 35th year, to the point I can't keep track of it anymore. And I was teaching all the way up to like 2 years back. I love being in the class. I love working with children. And I think I'm one of those teachers who had the luxury of teaching the same students from a period of 5 years and some all the way to 13 years. So they started with me like at 4, and I was able to teach them all the way to 17 years old. So not a lot of teachers actually have that luxury. The other thing I was able to do was I've taught 4-year-olds and I've also taught adults,
Right.
all the way, like I've taught college students, and so I got to see a very, very broad spectrum, of what happens in education, and also being able to track that. Whereas most teachers, I think I did I asked a group of teachers how many years they actually got to teach the same students. I think majority were 2 years, maximum maybe 3. Even when I started talking about 4, the numbers really dropped down to literally like maybe 1, and then after that was a 0. 5 years onwards was like a 0. So yeah, and so I'm drawing upon that experience, and realizing what didn't work, and looking at what kids like, and what really drives them, and that was how we created this whole thing to move education forward.
Right. So let's talk about the origin story of Teacher N, right? So how did you actually get started in the education line? And was this sort of like your main ambition to become a teacher or an educator?
Last was the last thing I ever wanted to do.
Right.
Teaching actually quite scared me, and it was something that I said I never ever want to do. So I keep telling people that don't tempt fate, because I did. And I ended up teaching, and I have never looked back because I loved it. I think the one thing that I may horrify people today is that I did a lot of things I never done ever before, and I did for the first time. I stepped foot in a class with not having taught a class ever before, not being trained, and I didn't even know what a lesson plan looked like. I had to teach, and I didn't even have a textbook to teach writing or to teach reading and comprehension. It was like I had to go to the library and did a lot of cutting and pasting, and then hoping that, and I was teaching basic students, beginner students, and also intermediate students at college, and I wasn't even sure if I was hitting the right level with the work I prepared. So then later on, then having taught for a while, I decided to start my own thing. And when I started, well, I'd never started my own business before. So, and it just went on. Never started a school before. So many things I'd never done before. Just did it. Yeah.
Right. And how did you actually get started in the education industry? What was your first subject that you actually taught?
English.
In a
Actually, English graduate. Okay. But because I never wanted to teach, I was working in the hotel industry. I've always been fascinated by the hotel industry, because coming from Penang with all the resorts along the beach, and I had the experience of doing part-time in hotels, and I said, wow, this is really cool. You get to meet these people from all over the world, but never had a chance to study hotel catering. So I went and I got my degree in English, but I didn't use it for the first couple of years of my working life. But later on, I think it was more because I had my daughter, and I realized that I needed to do something that had a semblance of a bit more, the time allowed me to have a bit more control, so that I can spend time with my children. But I didn't look for things that would put me out there. Yes, I would have been able to move faster, but I wasn't sure if those jobs would allow me to spend time with my kids. And then what about educating them? What about helping them, right? And I thought that if I could teach other people's kids, I could help my own, right? So a lot of teachers will tell you that's really difficult. They can teach other people's children, they can't teach their own. So I figured out how to do it with my kids. Yeah, finally.
Right.
Initially, yeah, it was I had to figure it out, because it wasn't, because you're their mother, right? It's not straight like right there that they'll listen to you and straight away see you as a teacher.
Right. And I guess from your daughter's perspective, right? In retrospect, I guess she's currently working together with you as a colleague as well in your organization. So in retrospect, right, looking into the education method that you have applied together with her towards her entire growing journey, what do you think you have done? How would you grade yourself as a mother and as an educator to your daughter?
Okay, that's an interesting question, Ajay. Right. Okay, maybe what people may want to know is this: when I created the curriculum, right? Having taught in colleges, and I was like, it's not making sense, and I need to do something for my children, because I don't want my kids to turn out where majority of them are not strong in the language. They couldn't speak well. They couldn't present. They couldn't really have a discussion, with the teachers. And worse is that they couldn't write academic papers. Okay, the thought processes were not there, and I couldn't find anything for them. And so when I created this, it was to fix this problem for my kids. And so when I opened this up and did this for children around Subang, and there was those who wanted to come in, well, I can say that what I'm teaching is the best I could give my own children. So and my daughters, they loved coming to our classes, what we have set up, and later on it helped build a relationship, because a lot of people, they know their kids as a daughter, but they never get to see their children as a student. You send them to school, but they don't experience that. So I was very lucky that I could see my children as students, right? Because they're in my class, how they interact, who they are, what they are like. And I got to meet their friends, because many of them come to my classes and I know them really, really well. So it's not, hi auntie, bye auntie. Like, we really have great discussions, when we meet up. And even when they were young, it was more like a pretty level, like we're dealing with each other on a pretty level playing field.
Right.
So, and today I get to work with them, and so I get to see my daughters as colleagues and also my business partner.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Reason why I ask is that we usually do ask educators who has daughters or sons. So during one of our education summit, one of the teacher was telling us that, hey, I was so focused on my job that I sort of like neglected my child a bit. So you're sort of the teacher that managed to balance both the best of both worlds and to really bring them up to the level and even becoming a colleague at nowadays, right? Okay. Now, zoom in onto the education side of things, which is why we are having Teacher Ann today together with us. Teacher Ann, how would you define education in your own terms? What does education actually mean to you in a whole retrospect?
Okay, first is that the kids have to thrive. Okay, that was how I judged what I was doing in the classes. Whether even the kids want to come to your class, follow your because we're imparting a lot of information, whether whatever I'm teaching is something they even want to learn. Okay, because I realize the hardest thing to do is, if you want to impact children and make a difference in their lives, and you're telling them, look, what I'm teaching you is really, really critical to what you need to know when you grow up. No, it's difficult if I force feed them. Okay, if I have to force feed them, then at the end of the day, someone has to push them, which is really not what you want the children to come out to be, right? Adults who have to be pushed. And I saw a lot of that in college, where young people actually need pushing. They need to be encouraged. They take so much work in order for you to even convince them that, look, what I'm sharing, they're so skeptical about teachers.
Right.
Okay, because I realized over the years is that they can tell that half the things as teachers in like, if you don't do the right thing, like if you take the traditional route, they can tell that half the things that you tell them is important doesn't even work.
Right.
Yeah, and they can feel it, because they can observe out there and what you say, and then they start not to listen. And people see that as rebellion. They see that as the children acting up. But what I saw was that the kids did not know how to tell you what it is that they find as a discrepancy. What you're saying and the real world is not matching.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's sort of there's sort of like a vibe from the student. It's like, okay, what if I learn this subject over here? Will I actually be using it for the 10 years to come? Will it even be relevant in the future to come as well? Right. Okay.
And
And
it's not even about whether it's relevant. It's more about, right, you tell us that this rule in school is important.
right.
Okay, like this was what happened, because I saw it happening in the schools that my students and my children were going to, right? Say, for instance, I think one of them was the length of the socks. Little things like that you can lose kids just because of that. You can disconnect from them. The length, the height of the socks, right? In some schools, they don't allow like ankle length socks. They don't even allow the bobby socks that get up to the knees. Okay,
Right.
so there's a certain length. And one of my friend's daughter, she got yelled at across the courtyard. Okay, because the teacher suddenly saw, she was wearing a baju kurung, and the teacher suddenly saw that she had ankle length socks, right? And they called parents in for things like this. And my friend had to tell the teacher, look, this doesn't make her a bad kid, right? It's just a pair of socks which I bought for her. And then she told me another story. The daughter's friend one day got called in because she wasn't wearing socks. And she told the teacher that, look, you confiscated all my socks. Yeah. You see? So they can tell, and therefore they're not gonna follow that rule.
Right.
So no matter what you do, they're not gonna follow that rule. And I
Right.
realize whatever we do in the class, it's got to make sense to the kids. So you don't impose rules that just don't make sense.
Right. And yeah, speaking of which, from the student's perspective, right, I guess it's very important as an educator to really allow them to see the linkage between where they are right now towards what's going to happen 10 years into the future. And which brings back to the topic that we're discussing today, which is connecting education to the real world, right? So, Teacher Ann, will you be able to sort of narrate some of the key elements that is crucial as an educator to really infuse into the education to be able to allow the students to be able to connect education to the real world in that perspective?
Okay, I think I'll go back to the word thrive.
Right.
Okay, the first thing is that you cannot, as educators, we cannot turn off their wanting to learn. Okay, because if you listen to kids and they say they hate learning, they hate the subject, they don't want to go to school, that is already starting them on this journey of not wanting to learn. And when we do 11 years of that, you just imagine the damage it does to the children. And I know for a fact that there were kids, by the time they were in secondary school, they wanted to give up on learning. The number I had to talk to in order to stop them from giving up on school. This was when I was teaching kids from schools from all over. This is my English classes. Yeah, they come from different schools. And then there were those that wanted to give up schooling at the age of 16 when they are in Form 4. So you see that. And then suddenly learning becomes relevant again when they actually get to choose which courses they want to do in college. But some of them you don't even have a chance to get them there to find out that there's something that's worth learning for them and that connects with them. And so we spend a lot of time doing that, and so whatever I did in the class, we make sure that even if we do something that's 10 years down the road, we're going to let them know that, look, this is how it's going to work out there. All right. And yes, you're not going to see the relevance today, but when you get there, I said, you're going to hear my voice in your head. Right. And you're going to hear Teacher N's voice saying, I told you so.
Right.
And they laugh. All right. But you're going to have to do things like this that connects with them, and they're okay, teacher. And then they imagine I was already teaching them things that were not relevant to exams, but they would follow me all the way to the last week before I had to end class for, let's say, SPM.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what we brought into the school when we opened the international schools. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And those skills that you actually teach them are those what is so-called life skill or skills that how would you define those type of education that you are actually imparting on that?
Okay, thank you. Actually, it was a lot of human skills, a lot of human skills. So, in order to do that, I had to be very human with the children, right? And the minute you put in the human skills, now a lot of people cannot fathom how do you do that and teach all the I guess the curriculum that you need to cover, right? But what we did was we just added them in, okay. And the more I added in the human component, the more the kids thrived, and the more they were picking up things at a speed that was like double, triple what you would normally struggle with, maybe let's say in a regular school. all right? And it will allow me to do all sorts of crazy things with them. Um, and I'll push them and they would do it. I ask them to do it 5 times, they would do it. Because it is about taking pride in your work. It's about, upgrading, doing that draft. So when you go to college and out to work, you're talking about drafts. Okay? What a draft means nothing to children.
Right.
So you're gonna have to get them to feel good about, give it another shot. You know, it, just that you haven't pulled it out. And all it takes is just to tell them, like, just think a little harder. That's it. And in order to do that, we as teachers, we gotta really watch and be very careful with our reactions. Okay.
Okay.
And then the whole collaborative skills, the engagement, the fun, and that we do a lot of serious stuff as well. And I'm very, very strong as a disciplinarian, but you discipline with a lot of care, all right? And you don't need to yell, really. And sometimes I deploy yelling because some kids, they just need it just to wake them up a little bit. And after, off we go again. And it can be years before I have to yell again, all right? But there's a lot of that human component, and I realized you had to make a connection with every single child in the class.
Right.
And I asked this to educators out there. I said, look, how many and even parents, and I can ask you this, Jay, how many of your teachers in your school, all the way up to college, made a personal connection to you? Not to
Right.
class, not to the
Mhm.
class, but
Right.
to you. Know
I
you
guess
well.
less than 1%. Yeah, I remember a teacher that really guides me on public speaking. So there was a time where even after school hours, they actually brought me back to a location to further drill down on all of the mechanics of public speaking. And that was quite a memorable moment. And I was probably 8 years old at the time, and I still remember it till today.
Exactly. So as a teacher, the kid need to see that you're there to really support and help them. And the helping is not about making them feel lousy about not knowing things. It's not about making them feel really, really bad, like you don't have any self-worth if you don't do well in exams, because a lot of them feel that way. Yeah. So how do you do that? And I had to figure that out along the way. And so the kids just loved it because they never felt bad in my class. And they just would just learn anything I threw at them. And I
Right.
was very, very, very creative with what I did with them.
All right. Could you share with us some of the ways on how you actually educate students in your classroom? So if I were to
Okay.
walk into teacher Ann's classroom, right, in an English course about grammar, right, how would I experience teacher Ann's
Oh,
class?
I don't teach grammar. And that is one of the things that will scare a lot of teachers. Because I grew up with very strong in English because I had parents who spoke English, and I was from the convent school and everything. And English was a free period for all of us, you know. And I can tell you, it wasn't in class that we learned English; it was outside of class. So the exams were like, it's a free aid, okay. So I thought back to that time, and we knew no. I mean, we learned grammar, but we didn't really bother with it, but we could write, you know. And by the time I came out, we couldn't remember anything about grammar. And when I started to teach, I was like, why do I have to teach grammar? And I looked back, it didn't really make sense because we didn't acquire English through grammar. So what I did was I looked at how natives. This is what I mean by the real world. You look at how the native speakers pick up a language, and it wasn't through grammar.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe what I can do is to help you help the listeners, right?
Right.
Understand what I mean by the real world. How do you find that real world? What do I mean by that? Okay. So with that, I may need you to help me get to the slide. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Because it helps to see it.
okay.
Okay. So to talk about the real world, I really have to talk about the kindergarten education, because I had to fix it. I had to redo the whole thing as well. So when you look at the kindergarten, okay, so what is the end game for the kindergarten, right? For most people, they think it's primary one, but no, the end game for the kindergarten is all the way to work. So what is the foundation you are laying for them? So when I talk to people about education, right? The first thing is like a lot of people don't think there's anything wrong with education, because at the kindy level, they say, look, our kids do very well. They get into the top primary schools and things like that. But then, and so nothing wrong, right? To a lot of educators, there's nothing wrong at kindy to primary level. Okay, so then when you go primary to secondary, talk to the primary teachers. No, there's nothing wrong, because our kids can get to the top secondary schools. Okay, same thing happens when they go to university. It's nothing wrong. But it's when they come out from university to go to work, and the employers say there's something wrong. So where is that breakdown? And now we're talking about the real world. So I'm going to share things that probably people don't really talk about, and I hope I'm not offending educators out there. I know you're doing the darnest for the kids, but nobody tells you this, and I'll talk about teacher training in a minute, right? But literally, okay, so it's not me saying it. There was this Gallup polls that was done in the US. It's very much the same all over the world. So the question that the survey asked, first off, were the chief academic officers in the universities. How well are universities preparing students for success in the workforce, right? So the first one they asked were the universities. And the universities came back and they said it was 96%. The graduates are prepared.
Right.
Then
So in other words, they ask them how well of a job do you think you as an educator are contributing to your students? So 96% of them say you did a good job on that.
Yes. Oh, actually, I should put the link there. Maybe I can do this. I can help send the link to you, because the article is there. And so they asked the same question to business leaders, and the percentage came back, and it was 11%. So you see the same question, the discrepancy. Back in the old days, it wasn't so bad, because if you really looked at how the students are being prepared, so this is something for most educators. I don't think they know they're aware of this. All right. Now the next thing is to understand why this is happening. Okay, you have to look at the real world versus the world of academia. Okay, now the children are being prepared, and they're one step away from the real world. Okay, so we have to prepare them for that. But the thing is that the teachers don't really function in the real world, because we don't have to worry about marketing. We don't have to worry about whether people want to come to our school, right? The kids are there. So you don't even know whether what we're teaching them is really what the real world is looking for. Okay, because they're actually 2 steps removed. Okay, now this is where the problem lies. The teacher training systems across the world, they're actually 3 steps removed from the real world. Okay, now the thing is, when I talk about being removed, I mean, see, I've talked to so many educators around, policymakers. Anything they put into academia, it has to be proven, tested, and you have to have statistics before they would even look at what you're asking them to add into the system.
Right.
But the real world doesn't work like that. Okay, the real world is one where you're going to be solving problems that have never been solved, and some problems have been around for 200 years and it hasn't been solved. Like as in education, right? There are problems where you have countries that are at loggerheads with one another and they can't solve that problem. So how in the world do you solve problems that has never been solved, right? And you can't look at textbooks because nobody has an answer. So you just literally got to figure a solution and give it a shot, and then you collect statistics along the way. However, academia They want certainty before they will ever put that in. So how do you teach kids with certainty for them to go out into that world where they're going to be dealing with so many things that are uncertain and with no solution? Right? Yes. So this is what I mean by looking for that real world. So when we, okay, no offense to anybody, when we got our teachers, we were looking for people who could apply the content, not trained to teach physics. I needed people who knew how to teach, how to use physics. At the same time, they need to know how to use math. They need to know how to use chemistry, all at the same time. You know, so that was how it all began. This, yeah, okay.
Right. So in a world, right, whereby if a students were to go into the real world to really solve a real world problem, right, what are the key attributes or the key lessons that is absolutely crucial in your mind that we have to teach students, especially starting from primary and secondary schools in Malaysia?
Okay, you know what? I know we didn't prepare questions or even the flow or whatever, but it just flowed right next to the next slide.
Right.
Okay. Now, I needed to put these diagrams out there because I had to figure out how to explain to parents and even my teachers as to why we have to do it differently, right? So the one thing about this cone of learning is you're not going to find this in a teacher training curriculum, nor are you going to find it in teacher training books. I found this in business books. And this was a complaint that one of the thought leaders in the world felt about education. And he said, look, you have to understand the cone of learning, right? The cone of learning is basically the different ways information is transferred to people. But at the end of 2 weeks, what is the rate of retention? Okay, so if you look at the yellow highlighted bottom 3 portion, that's where education happens for most students and most education systems around the world. All right, I'm going a little technical here before I go into the practical side. So reading and reading is the worst way to remember information. After 2 weeks, you remember only 10%. Okay, and you see the rest. If you do the rest, you just keep cone of learning, you will find it anywhere. So I'm not going to go in great detail here, but the point is that the retention happens better when you teach it in the other manners, all the different other ways of transferring information. But now this bottom 3 method, it only works for 20 to 25% of students. All right. It doesn't work on the majority of the kids, and yet we persist in teaching it this way. And the other one, something that people need to know, the world works at 50% and above. That's how the real world works. Okay? And that's why sometimes you hear people say kids who do very well, but when they go out to the real world, they kind of get they kind of get they
Lost a bit.
find it very difficult, to move on up and to be the success that they had the potential to be.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so that give you a little bit of info there, and therefore I think now coming to this next one, the learning outcomes. Now this one I can even do without the slides, but it helps if you have a look at the information there. I was again looking at how to explain this, and I did a whole list of different ways students are assessed in school, and then I started thinking about how are people out there working being assessed. How do you employ a CEO? How do you get a CEO? Based on what qualification and in what way do you assess them? And top key positions that human, the what do you call the headhunters are looking for. And this one, educators and parents, you really would need to know this. So when I found this on Forbes, okay, the next box there, I highlighted a couple of red ones there because where do you find this in our education curriculum? You know, how do you teach kids self-confidence tempered by vulnerability?
Wow.
Yes, backbone and heart at the same time. You know, finely tuned intuition. In fact, our education system requires that the kids must know. So how do you? They need to finely tune their intuition as an adult, but you need to lay it when they're kids. Just that intuition, ability to intuit, right? Yeah. And then the next step we looked at was entrepreneurs.
Right.
All these things are not taught in school. Then we realized at the end that the outcomes, yeah, okay, maybe I'll go through a few of this, the attributes of entrepreneurs. Okay, if you, the second last one, the power of the pivot.
The power of the pivot.
Yeah, where in our education system are we teaching the kids to pivot?
Right. Pivot. If I use the term, it's in terms of knowing when the road is coming to an end and knowing where to divert to a different new direction from there.
Yeah, or even when suddenly something happens, you just need to change. Okay,
Right.
so I'm getting a bit technical here, but this is the outcome. This is the real world. So if we don't know this, how do you adjust what is at ground level? All right, children take in whatever we throw at them. You see. Okay, so
Okay.
maybe we can take this off for the moment and just carry on with it. So and then so what are we doing in the classes, right? We do a lot of crazy things. We get our kids to do treasure hunts for math. Oh, we do debates in math. That's the real world.
Okay.
So when you're working as an engineer, how do you talk about the calculations? How do you argue? How do you even tell people where that's coming from?
Right.
Most of our students are not even taught to talk about math.
Right. And by the way, for those watching right now and also in future, teacher Anne runs two international schools. Which one of them is actually called the first entrepreneurial school in Malaysia. So could you talk us about more about how what does it mean about the first entrepreneurship school in Malaysia, and how does it really transpire in terms of the day-to-day education syllabus in the school?
Sure. But as you can see, right, where the real world is. So what we decided is that, you know what, let's bring the real world into the classroom. So we were doing it more the human component, the skills, and like the kids collaborating with one another, and like debates and all that in math. They don't expect that, but all of them have to collaborate with one another. And when we brought in entrepreneurship, it was more because as an educator, I realized I was running a business. And as I started reading up about it, I said, hey, why aren't our children taught all these things? They have critical skills. So a case in point is we have students who are running their own thing, right? There's this little girl who started her own tea business. Now, she had to make her own blends, okay? And therefore, she had to know the flowers. She had to know what each of the flowers were doing when you consume them and things like that. So there's a lot of science behind it. She started the business at the age of 7.
Right.
Okay.
7 years old.
She wanted a tea business, not cupcakes as her mother expected, a tea business. And she wanted it so that her father could sleep at night and to help the teachers relax after they're done being stressed out by the kids in school.
Right.
So there is science right there. Biology, for instance, and there's chemistry involved as well. Then as you set up a business, you're talking about you need to know entrepreneurship. You need to know how business works. There's business studies right there. You need to know how to calculate. So there's math right there. Solving a social problem right there, because she even has her own little charity called Little Hands, Big Heart.
Little Hands, Big Heart.
Yeah, and that's what we mean by the real world. It's an integration of how everything comes together. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And in your school, right, or in the international schools, are children or students being encouraged to start their own ventures or businesses like this?
Yeah, while they're still in school. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we help them connect with people, and they have no issues going out there to speak at entrepreneur conferences,
Right.
things like this. So because okay, a case in point is you tell kids that look, you have to learn how to speak in front of people.
Right.
Right? Most don't even get the chance. A few chosen few get paid to speak in front of people. But
Right.
here, our students know that, look, you have to know how to move people. When you speak to people about what you do, are you able to convince them that what you have got has got value
Right.
for them? Because otherwise people are not going to have that fair exchange for your product or service and in exchange for money,
Right.
right? If the value is not there, they're not going to do it. And then it also counts on how well you convince people that you are giving value. Then suddenly they realize that, oh, that's why it's important to speak, to
Right.
learn how to be better speakers. And
Right.
that's what we
And yeah, and not only that, I can imagine the little girl right now being eagerly wanting to to understand. Okay, how do I calculate all of this, my finances in my company, the cost of it, and all of those suddenly seems to be so relevant that immediately I need to be able to understand all of this in order for me to run the business.
Yeah, her mother had to fund her 1,000 ringgit to get started, right? And you know what? The mother told me she's already paid it back, right? Because that was the capital. It's like you take from somebody. When you make the money, you got to return it, and she did. So that is again the real world.
Right.
Mm.
Right. And most of us, even in my schooling time, we only know the silo that we're in, right? So our main target is to get full A's in SPM or PMR. But right now, for your student, it's much more of, hey, how can I provide a service or product that people really want, right? And if people don't want it, it's almost like I got to find out which ways I can implement, or what can I learn to really increase my chances of having that product to be relevant in the marketplace.
Yeah, and you've got to learn to think of other people. So that's why empathy is so critical. You
Right.
know, if you don't understand people and you don't know what they want, and you insist that, look, you're gonna have this anyway. Unless you came up with the banking ATM machines. Because when the
Right.
guy first created it, people didn't want it. They still want to be served. But he saw way ahead. And then later on, because of the convenience, people wanted it. So until you know that what you've got is like way ahead, you just got to be patient to get there. Otherwise, empathy is really, really critical. And by
Right.
the way,
Right.
that girl has run her business for 5 years already. Mm.
Wow. Okay. So she's still 12 years old if we add on the 5 years on top of
Yeah,
the 7 years.
yeah, 11 this year.
Okay. Wow. So in that case, teacher and for teachers, probably local schools in Malaysia, as a teacher, right? How can a teacher incorporate the so-called real life lessons into their current school environment so that students are being able to be exposed to the real world out there? It could be in terms of their skills or their activities that they are currently running in schools. Any comments on that, teacher Ann?
Yeah, I think I'll put a challenge out there, teachers, for educators there, that if you want to be able to really impact the children's lives, figure how to make the kids love the subject you're teaching. Yeah. If you can do that, the impact that you'll make in their lives, they'll never, never, ever forget you. All right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So to really
Mm.
make them love the subject manner. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
be discussing more about this because Teacher N has been in a lot of different projects or ventures that is increasing the ability of students to really fall in love with the subject with different initiatives. But before that, there are a couple of questions over here from the audience that I'm looking over here. So welcome again, Aziz Rajab. So sometimes his question is that sometimes we heard that universities blaming the secondary school, and the secondary school goes down and blame the primary school, and then it goes down to kindergarten. So who's to be blamed? Where's the gap? Is there any comprehensive and meaningful solutions for this? Any comments on this? Yeah, so we spoke about the train of continuation of the education, right? So any comments on this, teacher?
Yeah. Actually, you're spot on, Aziz. Yeah. Great question. I've been to many, many education conferences around the world, and nobody has a solution because we realize the solution cannot come from academia because a lot of people are very entrenched with what has worked, in inverted commas, because nobody thinks that right now primary or early childhood education has got a problem. Okay, and the worst of it all is that at the university they are not able to impact all the way down and convince the kindergarten what to do in order to fix this, or the primary school in order to fix this, and whether the teachers and the teacher trainers in those areas are actually even willing to listen. Okay, I give you a case in point. Because I had to redo a whole kindergarten curriculum, because I had people tell me, no, this the kindergarten systems won't do. Can you do something about it? And we realized that it got dumbed down. The kindergarten curriculum got dumbed down for the children. And I give you an example of the science that they are taught. Okay, kids learn in kindergarten that a tomato is a vegetable. Yeah, but in science it is a fruit. And the reason I can tell you this is we are teaching secondary and college students, and we had to undo it. It was only when I did the kindergarten curriculum I said, oh my God, the science is wrong. But you're not going to get people who are very biomedical degree holders, or people who are really a degree holder in biology to come and teach the kindergarten kids. They're not going to do that. You're going to have kindergarten trained teachers to teach kindergarten, and so they're going to be following the books, right? The other thing was even math, bonding. When we looked at it, it was not taught correctly. The concept was not there. All right, things like this. So I can go on a whole list of things like this. And then there's a tendency to start from the beginning. Okay, it's got to be for the little children, and they can handle easy words, because you need to teach them how to read easy words. But it doesn't mean that you have to teach them only easy words. They can learn it, but yeah, you can teach them easy words to read, but you don't hold back on the languaging, So because 3-year-olds already know the names of dinosaurs, they can tell you everything about the dinosaurs. But when you look at the kindergarten book that you pick up, even the primary book, they're still talking about very simple animals, like simple words.
Right.
Cat, dog, tiger, donkey. When kids already know about the 3-toed sloth, for instance. So what if they don't know how to read it? But they need to know it.
Right.
So yeah, until and unless there is that, I guess it has to be that will for someone who is strong enough politically to say, look, we've got to just shift everything. It's going to be very, very difficult to change. Yeah. And that was the reason why I did it on the private side. Because first and foremost, we got to figure out what's wrong. And then we got to do it and show that, yeah, otherwise it's very hard for people to believe this.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I don't know how to tell you. It's just as educators, we just got to do whatever it takes when we deal with kids. Yeah.
Right. And teacher, and just for an analogy, right? Let's say if we were to play Jenga, the block, right? And usually there's that few blocks that is the critical pillars that will cause the entire system to crash or to thrive. So what are the key pieces in the entire education system that you have actually found out to be sort of like the very important pillars that as educators or parents out there should really take notice of in order for them to have a better chance of raising up a successful a child from that case?
Okay, big picture. Kids need to see the big picture. And you cannot teach things in silo. No. All right? The minute it's in silo, even if the information doesn't make sense, based on the information that is siloed, they will tell you it's a fact. Okay? Yeah, I see that. I tell you what has come out. And so you got to literally cross subjects and cross skills. But because teachers are trained literally to focus on individual subjects, because, like when people talk about STEM, I found out from people who were in charge of the STEM movement in Malaysia, and not just in our country, it's even in other Asian countries. They told me that, and it's so difficult. How, in our schools, we can't get the teachers to take on STEM. The science teachers. The bio teacher will say, no, this got chemistry in it. I'm a bio teacher, I can't do this. And then the physics teacher will say, no, there's chemistry in this, so I'm teaching physics, I can't do this. and it was different countries. The teachers were this was the feedback I was getting, you know. So, and because of that, they're learning everything as separate, but they're all integrated. Science, the three sciences and the double math, they do not exist on their own.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, they are. They're one. It comes under one universe, and not only that, econs is part of the sciences. You know, language is part of it. So how do you?
Yeah. So let's say if I were a parent, right, would you be able to articulate to me, right? Let's say, for example, biology, physics, and chemistry. How would they actually integrate that into an education experience for the kids to be able to connect all the puzzles together?
Sure. Oh, use the internet. Use the YouTube. All right, the YouTube videos, because whatever they're learning in school, if they're really not interested in a particular subject, and teachers, you can do this too. Maybe explore together with your child or your students and say, okay, let's find out what this is used for. You know, and I did it with one student who was struggling with this topic for electrolysis, and we just keyed in on YouTube and we found out that you can use electrolysis for hair removal.
Right. Okay. Hair removal. Okay.
Correct? Yeah. So I said, why don't you check it out then? You know, and then the other one was they removed they got this wreckage from under the ocean, like, you know, those metal anchors and all that was like so badly rusted. So they were using hydrolysis to clear it all up, because at the end of the day, these things that you pick up under the ocean floor, they've got a lot of value, and especially if they're from like a couple of hundred years ago, and it's got historical significance, and therefore there are actual uses. So then when they see, oh right, it crosses over to antiquity, for instance, you know, or it crosses over to the beauty industry. Oh really? I never thought of it that way. So girls who are not interested in physics, yeah, check it out, because you know what? That if you go to the beauty shop, right, the one that for weight loss or facial and stuff like that, if you look at all the little devices that they're using just to smoothen up the face and so on, I mean, that's physics right there.
Right. Right.
You
Okay.
know, so as adults, as teachers, you know, just take that one extra step just to let them see the relevance, and the
Right.
minute they can see the relevance, the learning starts to make a whole lot more sense. But we just may have to take that little bit extra to do the work with them. It doesn't have to be for them, with them. Does that
Right.
help?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. It's more of like, hey, uh, come and learn about chemistry. So to them, it's like, oh, why should I learn about chemistry? But hey, would you like to know how to make your skin brighter and more beautiful? Oh, tell me how about
Yeah,
it and how does it work? And it sort of
yeah.
like provides a very good context for them.
Right, use fruits. You know, what do the fruits do for your face? And it'll be so cute if they actually experiment on one another, you know. um, Bringing fruits and you crush it up and you put you can wash it out later on, you know. And the other one can even be, because you need to know pressure points as well, massage, all that is physics, right? You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
so you go and learn it and have a look and see how it works on the face.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
for
And it
circulation.
involves biology, and then there's the entire chemistry, physics, and biology as well.
Yeah,
Right.
and then
Um.
all points they've got names. I mean, they're the actual names to the parts of the body, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay. So teacher, and in your school, right? How are education or class learning being conducted in a way that what you're describing over here? It seems that it's something very fun to make it relevant for students and as well for the entire same time to be able to allow them to connect it to the real world as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. So how
We'll show you. It's hard to explain, but we'll show you. Then you'll have a better idea. We
uh,
put this together because we were like, it's so hard to explain to people, and we did this for parents, and when we go out there and we have to, we give talks to people, right? And so we created this video to show to redefine learning in fun and creative ways, you know. So yeah, we will play it for you if you can pull out the video.
okay.
Mm.
So Melissa will have a video, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Let me have a look.
and you'll see how science is taught. You see biology there and physics and so on. I'll explain after you've watched it. was a bit laggy there.
Yeah, slightly laggy, but I see a couple of very interesting points. I see that there's water fight and then there's dance move creating onto it. That yeah, how does it work in a whole? I see that there's a lot of experimentation and projects as well for students.
Yeah, I mean, the kids want to remember information, right? They need to, but in most cases, because for exams, there's a lot of content recall, right? And as you can see by reading, you only retain 10% after 2 weeks, right? So we had to figure ways to help them retain information, right? Um, and so we got them to move their bodies, okay? And we know that, you see, like the real life, once they finish school, the way we teach them stops, okay? And you move into the real world, and learning in the real world is not the way we're teaching in the schools right now. So dance is the real world, because that's what they will pay money for, to go learn performances. When it comes to entertainment, if they go into those fields, right? The other one is like Tai Chi is the real world. Okay, playing with light and shadow is the real world. If you go into photography, you go into especially video production and all that. Yeah. So why don't we use it then with the kids? And it helps them remember, right? The water fight, yeah, they have to do a quiz. So why not let them throw water at each other? It's still a quiz, you know. They can have fun, and because what you want is for them to remember the experience. Yeah. And to remember, they got the experience. You see,
Okay.
Those were some of the things that we had to make the basis of our education, that we want the kids to experience learning.
And in the way, teacher, and all of the activities over there that you have shown us, are those an actual syllabus that is in
Oh yeah,
the Emas International
yeah.
School?
It's
Okay.
the one at the water theme park. It's compulsory for all year 10s and year 11 students to go to the water theme park. And the
Wow.
year 10 students are doing physics experiments that they have to create on their own, because otherwise, how do they understand hypotheses and variables? Because
Right.
when you learn in the book, hypothesis, you already know the outcomes, you already know the variables. It's fixed. The variables actually for you to experiment you, because you don't know the answer, right? And so we take them there and they have to figure it out. And the year 11s are actually going there for math experiments. You know, they're like, huh? Math experiments, you can do that? Yeah, because otherwise math is not human. So that's, you can't, you have to humanize it. And math is just not related to the real world for most people, including me. I had to give it up because I didn't get it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I see that there's a lot of effort in trying to add on a lot of fun and excitement and relevancy to the overall education journey for the students as well. And in doing so, right, for example, teacher N, for a teacher, right, with a fixed syllabus that is currently handed down to them by the school or the current syllabus that they are having over here, how could they actually infuse that to make that, are they able to recreate themselves? Are there any ways that you can suggest to them on how they can recreate the syllabus to make it fun and engaging for students?
Okay, we didn't recreate it. First and foremost, we didn't rewrite the books because we knew it'll take too much time, right? So what we did was we used content and we kind of added and tweaked how we approached it with the kids. That was all we did. Say for instance, if you needed to get kids to finish off their math work, right? There's nothing stopping you from just doing it like, okay, you give the kids, okay, you got to do exercise 2 and the 20 questions, right? And there's nothing stopping them from doing the first 5 questions, and then there are 4 in a group, and you've got snakes and ladders. So the minute you finish 5 questions, roll the dice and see how many steps you take. That's all it takes to change the energy in the classroom. Then you do the next 5 questions. So the faster you finish the questions, the faster you get to move on the board, because you got to
Right.
roll the dice. That's all it takes. If you want to make it faster, then maybe every 2 questions, because snakes and ladders, it takes quite a way to get to the top, right? Yeah,
Right.
things like that.
Okay.
That's all it takes. And that is more about moving the kids to make them want to do the work for you. Then when it comes to the real world, and actually for them to even see that you created, creatively made this fun for them, it gets them thinking as well. And the other one, which is a real human, real world quality, is they will appreciate you. And appreciation is something you want the kids to learn and pick up from a young age. And appreciation of the teacher, gratitude to the teacher for even wanting to make something relevant for them, or even considering the fact that it's boring for them. That is the real world. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. I guess in a way, I'm seeing that there are a lot of different subjects that are being offered in Emas International School. A few things that really caught my attention is that you even have something called social intelligence and empathy movement as well. It's something that I don't really see in many schools or institutions out there. Could you explain more about what is it all about, the social intelligence, empathy movement? And then I see that there's sort of like a SEAL training as well. So all of this seems like something really interesting over there.
Thank you. Okay, maybe I'll talk about social intelligence, because, like I said, the human component, right? Kids, this was something one of my business mentors told me. He said, "Anne, you really, really got to do something," because he was in one of the top boys' school in Australia, and he said the one thing that they were not taught to do was to network with one another. Okay, so as a jock, he was a sports person. They did not connect with the nerds. And he says the nerds are ruling the world right now, the economy. Okay, and so he said you really need to get the kids to network with one another. And so when we did our curriculum, we made sure there was a lot of collaboration, and we talked to the kids about, look, you are building a network right now when you're kids. Okay, these are the people whom you're gonna meet, and you probably will be collaborating together with in the real world. So we looked into social intelligence. We didn't want moral, because the subject is too skewed towards memorizing, and it's rote learning, and there's one answer. But the real world doesn't work that way. So we looked at the issues that kids are facing with one another. If it's a primary class, and at primary 1 and 2, what are the issues they deal with? Okay, at the upper levels, what are the issues they deal with? And one of them at secondary level was how they interacted with the parents. And what you want is for kids to I give you an example of one. You know how sometimes parents think that the kids just want things from them and they don't know how to give back? So we did this whole activity where the kids have to think about what they want from the parents. But then we have another column, and we ask them, what are you willing to give your parents to get what you want? So that it's a two-way thing. So if your parents are, and then if your parents are worried about your safety, if you want to go out with your friends, right? If your parents are worried about your safety, what are you going to do in return to make sure they don't worry? So it's a
Okay.
two-way thing, and that's what we call social intelligence. So we dived very deep into looking at the issues related to the children. So that was how we created our social intelligence program. Yeah,
Right.
we even put history in there so that they understand, especially the Second World War. Yeah, it was this whole discrimination and this segregation thing that came about, and so instead of just keeping it as history, we actually brought it in to look at how we interact as a whole world.
Okay. So yeah. So for those of you out there that has any questions for Teacher Ann, please do comment down below. So we hope to be able to have more conversation on this with Teacher Ann. And Teacher Ann, also aside from the Dwi Emas International School and Sri Emas International Schools. And by the way, what's the difference between the both of these international schools?
Okay, we actually had to figure out how to differentiate the two schools, because the basic of it, the foundation of the teaching, the curriculum is similar, like how we approach each subject. But the demographic of the parents sending the kids is very, very different. In Dwi Emas, we have more entrepreneurs and people who own business people. who send their kids there. And we realized that, having been teaching entrepreneurship, right, we realized that there is a problem handing over businesses to the second generation. I think it's only like 30%. Don't quote me, because I can't quite recall the percentage, but passing from second generation to third generation, it drops down to 9% success. So there is that issue of handing over for a lot of those parents, and they want their kids to not just live off what the parents have built. I'm sure many of them want their kids to be just as entrepreneurial as they are. And so we did that. We decided, look, let's do an entrepreneur program on top of that. But I couldn't do it in the other two schools because I have a lot more people who are professionals, and they're working for people. And to them, no, I want my kids to focus on the education component. So we didn't put it into the other two schools. So the differentiating factor is the entrepreneurship, because that really pushes it into the real world.
Right.
And the mindset as for an entrepreneur. And it doesn't mean that you have to be an entrepreneur. You just need to have that mindset, because a lot of companies would love to hire people to work for them who think like an entrepreneur.
Okay, right. And it's so-called entrepreneurship. That there's a buzzword to be able to develop entrepreneur employees to be able to generate new projects and ventures for the company as well.
Correct. Right. And so in our school, what we did was, our teachers and our admin, they're actually encouraged to also set up their own thing, or to work with us to set up another branch of the business or something. And we don't want them to run it as just a manager. We even want them to have ownership, because then you understand what it takes to make it happen. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that's where
Right. So on the many different projects and initiatives by teacher, and I believe there are many more that are on the plate that is coming up soon. But one of the interesting project or initiative is the EdVenture. Could you tell us more about this initiative or the organization that you're currently having over here?
which one is that again? Sorry.
EdVenture.
Okay, EdVenture was I first started off doing it as English classes. But what happened was, because when we set up the school, they said, my team said that, okay, we wanted to have the same philosophy, pedagogy, and whole approach of EdVenture. So moving forward now, everything that we do falls under the EdVenture group. And it's a similar philosophy and the pedagogy moving forward. And you'll be happy to know that we just signed an MOU with Australia to open 3 schools there, which is cool, because this is a Malaysian product, Yeah. And we're collaborating with Finland we collaborated, actually. I've got Finnish partners, and she wrote the early childhood curriculum for Finland. So we created this Finnish Asian hybrid, so that we bring the best of the East and the best of the West and the best of the East together.
Right.
So those are some of the initiatives. But there are pushbacks from parents, just so you know, on what we're doing, because of the way education goes. There's this idea that you have to have either one or the other. So it comes from a more scarcity mindset, that how can the kids have fun and learn? Exams are serious,
Right.
You got to teach them seriously in order for them to do well seriously. But no, what we're doing is they're having a lot of fun to learn seriously, so that they can do well for the exam. So it was this whole idea that you're having too much fun. You're not focusing on the academics. But then I tell parents, look, if we weren't serious about the academics, I wouldn't be spending so much time figuring out how to teach a kid, right? How to help them to remember for exams. At the end of the day, we want them to do well. Mm-hmm. But in order for them to do well, it must make sense for them, and they must be able to recall it. They have to understand it. And we are working so hard to do that. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it is not either or. They have to have both. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for Ace Adventure, right? What are some of the key initiatives that is being put forth by the organization, and would you be able to reveal some to us, to audiences and teachers out there?
Okay, I think the latest one that we just did was our Emas, right?
Right.
Our third floor is going to be turned into a design center,
Right.
and it's now out there, and therefore we can talk about it. It's going to be the merging of the three E's to reshape the world. All right, the three E's being education, the environment, and entrepreneurship. So there is a whole school that's going to be within our school where the kids are going to be working on environmental sustainable initiatives. Yeah, this is actually to make sense of the sciences that they're learning. All right, so they're working on real issues, be it recycling, because people don't know the end game of when they send things for recycling. Yeah, but we are going beyond recycling. It's just so much out there that we need to work on.
Right.
Enzymes, another one. Um, yeah, this is to name a couple of them.
Right. And yeah, so some of the initiative that I guess previously have shared with us, it's sort of like a game that teaches chemistry, right? Would you be able to share with us more about that game? Because I find it very interesting that someone you're able to bring so much fun and engagement into a subject such as chemistry in by itself.
Okay, we actually did that. We started working on it about 2013 or thereabouts, and back then the technology was not as, as I guess sophisticated as it is today. So we ended up with a game that was really really heavy, but we won a lot of awards for it. It was what we wanted to do was make the kids remember chemistry better, faster, and easier. So we create a whole RPG game, a role playing game for chemistry. So
Right.
they actually go through an adventure. You do not see a textbook in there. But then after doing it, we realized that it wasn't really meant for teachers to teach, but then schools that wanted to teach it, they didn't know how to use it because it was for year 7 or Form 1 kids, but we had Form 4 material content in there. So if you're teaching lower sec, you the teachers don't know upper sec content, you know, and we realized the primary kids really enjoyed it. So primary teachers are not trained to teach chemistry, you know. So when we did the game, it was meant more for, yeah, we can pull out the a visual of it, yeah.
Right.
Yes. So
Wow,
yeah.
that looks very, very delicious for students to play on. Yeah, if I'm a student, I would definitely be very interested to find out more about this.
And those little characters, we call them particles, for particles,
Right.
right? And, some of them, they actually go according to the elements. And the main character, the guy with the character with the white hair,
Mhm.
his name is Rube. Full name Rubidium. So it's for rubidium, right? And he is a reactive metal. So he comes from this land called reactor. Okay, so we had to do it in such a way where the kids can link it to the sciences, right? And the thing about these creatures in a reactor, because they're reactive metals, they're very light. So these characters float around, very low density,
Right.
and they are very reactive with water, you know. So these little creatures, they get destroyed when water touches them, you know. So things like this. But we didn't do a hack and slash game because we know that's not the value that we wanted to drill in the kids. So but it was more about learning science, but they're really playing a game, and you don't have to know chemistry to play this game. But we
Right.
are at the point where we really really have to redo it because it's not that easy. It crashes because of all these new technologies. You really have to spend a lot of money just to keep up with upgrading the back end of it, the
Right.
programming,
Right.
for it to work in like
Hmm.
what iPhone today, iPhone 11,
Yeah.
11. This was
Right.
done when we had iPhone 6, I think, or iPhone 5 before that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Mm.
but I really like the intent that is being brought forth into the chemistry subject, is that you break down all the elements of chemistry, for example, and to really have a backend story and to have something relatable, such as a cartoon character that is created specifically for that particular element that is being put forth, right? So it becomes like a story for kids or children which are playing the game.
So the question is, just imagine if primary kids, because this happened with some of our students in primary, because we expose them to the game, and when they hit year 7, which is Form 1, they told the parent, "Mom, now I understand. Now chemistry makes so much sense because they enjoyed playing the game when they were about 11 or 12 years old."
Right.
So just imagine, as a teacher, wouldn't we want the kids coming in excited about chemistry rather than dragging their feet having to learn chemistry? you know yeah,
Mm.
that was what we set out to do, but there's a whole lot of educating that we had to do to even convince parents to buy chemistry for primary kids.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
Mm.
how was the reaction when kids are playing the game, and also teachers or parents which are the first time when you introduce the game to them? How was their reaction then? Yeah.
They love the idea. A lot of people wished this game was there when they were learning chemistry. In fact, our artists, our artists in our studio, all of them are programmers. They are there and they're still with us because they believed in this. They wish someone had done it for them, and they want to be a part of this project. But having said that, it requires a whole lot of funding to finish off the other 19 games that we wanted to do, 5 for each subject, and the 3 sciences and the math,
Right.
and all of them linking and coming under one universe. I was talking about the fact that
Right.
these subjects don't exist on their own. Yeah,
Mm.
it's going to take a
Okay.
whole lot of funding in
Right.
order to finish.
Right. So will the idea be to really transcribe all of the current syllabus that we have in the education system into a game-based learning experience for children?
Yeah, that's what we wanted to do. 2013 when we started this. Yeah, took us about 4 years to complete it, and we launched it in 2017. By then, technology had changed, so we're like, oh, it was really tough doing this.
Right. Yeah,
Mm.
and then and that's one of the things that I really love about Teacher N is that you're just way ahead of the curve in really finding out what really jives in well with teachers and students, and to be able to allow them to have that wanting to learn experience, right? In terms of getting them to learn subjects such as chemistry, right? And I believe that you have many more initiatives aside from this as well. Would you be able to share with us some of the other initiatives that you're currently embarking on towards
Sure.
this? Mm.
Yeah, actually, one of the things you might want to find out about is because we actually decided to take 2 or 3 steps backwards to get people more used to the characters in the game. And so we created Chemical Bonding Game. It's a card game. So that can be found. I think we recently got into Kinokuniya,
Oh, all
the
right.
game in Kinokuniya. And we are working on 2 other games, all card or board games, one for physics and one for biology. But it takes time. So those are some of the initiatives. And then we are also working on comics to
Wow,
teach
great.
chemistry. So you see the same characters, but in comic form. But it is not about putting content the way you normally would see it. It's a story.
Right. Hmm.
So there's a lot more depth than just the facts about chemistry. So that one will be launched in a couple of months. Yeah. And we've got people now, including I think our MOE recently, we got word from them that they want to have access to this game. Yeah. So
Wow.
let's see what happens with it.
Wow, this will be something very interesting for the future of education. And I can see kids learning just by playing games and reading comic books in subjects such as this, right? So,
Mm.
what are the subjects that are currently in place for the initiative that you're trying to create over here? For
I
example, so we have chemistry. Is there going to be biology, physics, sejarah, probably?
Okay. We chose the subjects that was difficult to learn across the world, because history is a bit more difficult, because different countries, they focus on different parts of history, mostly focusing on what happens in their country. So we chose not to do history, but we knew that STEM was a problem, you know, definitely in our country. But we didn't look at how we're talking about going global. So we had to think globally,
Right.
and not just within our country, because it's a problem here. But then, can we solve the problem bigger than our country?
Right.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
we chose that because many countries, they wanted people to do science, but as in our country, science is a struggle learning it. Yeah, that's why we wanted to do physics, chemistry first, because it's the toughest actually to learn and to teach. And physics and bio, then we were going into math and MS. We actually have the the, the, the biggest bad guy in the whole universe, in the universe that we've created. We know where we want to go with it. We just need people to provide us with the programmers. If the government can do that, I'm just putting it
Right.
out there, you know, provide us with the programmers, we can tell them what to do,
Mm.
to create a game that we can take beyond our shores, all right,
Right. Mhm.
into the world out there.
Mm.
Mm.
And I guess, teacher, and what we have been discussing for quite uh, right until now, right? I can see that there's so-called like a bigger picture in terms of what you're trying to build over here in terms of education, right? So what's the end goal? So coming up front for the next 5 to 10 years to come, what could we actually expect coming from teacher and your team as well in building the whole bigger picture in education?
Okay, I think we talked about this actually even many years back already, when we said that we know there's going to come a time where a lot of the kids are going to learn more from the internet than they are going to learn from the classroom. So we knew that, and we were preparing for that. That's why we were very focused on the human component, right? You can't run. The kids are going to need to come together to learn how to interact with one another and deal with one another. So COVID actually just made it so clear. Many schools couldn't pivot. They could not. They didn't know how to take the education online. And then suddenly the teachers realized that they're competing with the internet. And so people were telling me that, the kids are bored. The teachers are just going on and teaching them, giving them content, and after that they got to do a whole lot of work. I said,
Right.
do you know really what it takes for teachers to go online? We literally have to stop teaching and go into production.
Mm. Right.
Yeah. In order to engage the kids online, because which teacher training out there system has got one component where they're teaching the teachers how to engage and create curriculum to go in front of a camera, right? None. So if
Right.
you look at the things that engage little children, they learn a heck of a lot from your productions, you know?
Right.
So something to think about there.
Right. So, and by the way, how was the transition like during MCO in your team during that lockdown period? How's the transition of education coming from offline to online like?
Okay, I guess we're very lucky to have teachers as crazy as I am. And they came on board all because they wanted to help change education, right? And the crazy part was we didn't know what we were changing it to. This is on hindsight. We realized we're changing it, but then we realized years later we didn't know what we were changing it to. We knew we were changing. And later on we realized we're changing it into the future, right? So when the whole lockdown happened and kids couldn't come to school, we were ready. Thank goodness to the haze over the past 3 years. We were already prepared to go online, and we just deployed the whole thing. The first day of the lockdown, we went online, and we went on the whole day of classes, and the kids were being engaged. We were watching over the kids doing their work, and they had collaborations going. They were presenting. Can you imagine they were doing a performance in my English class with whatever they can find in the house, and they did a performance, right, together, and they're all in different places. We had swimming classes going on. Our sports were still going on, like our dodgeball. all that was still going on. So people ask, how did you make that happen? Say, yes, we can. They just need to learn to do the on-land drills and do the creative stuff like synchronized swimming, but it doesn't have to be with water. They can do things that synchronize, you know. So we just went online. Our sports, everything just went online.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So the transition was so-called already expected, but it's just that it came a time where MCO happened. Everything can be actually deployed in a much full extent in terms of how you're running it.
So when the government actually extended the school year to December 18th, my people were like, "But we've been teaching the entire time." So yeah, we decided to keep to our, current, timetable, and
Right.
because I've been teaching, kept up with it. So yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. So some questions also from Aziz over here. I guess he's very curious, looking into all of the subjects that has been shown just now. So do you have IT teams, graphic teams, technical teams, editing teams amongst the teachers that you have in your organization?
Okay, we because of our marketing, because we are a private entity, right? So we have to do marketing. We have and we have our own studio, right? So we ended up, yes, we do have graphics people, we do have IT editing people, who we have videographers. Like we're a school, we're not even a marketing or advertising company. We've got 5 videographers in our school, because we need to know how to go online. So a lot of our content, we are actually doing recording to take online, so that because we are opening more schools, and therefore the teacher training has to be able to reach out, and those people need to have access to what we're doing. And so we ended up getting more videographers so that we can put it out there. And editing, we sometimes send it out. We outsource editing. But yes, we do have graphics people, but they're very, very busy with the games and even our marketing work, that they really don't have time to do the graphics for our in-class teaching. So the teachers are doing it. Yeah, but I've got, and honestly, if you really ask yourselves, yeah, all of you educators, you have more skills than teaching, because you have hobbies, So my teachers, yes, they're teachers, but many of them are dancers, many of them are gamers, some of them are like Ironman, cross country athletes. I've got people on super bikes because that is their hobby, things like this. And I've got a lot of teachers who cook and so on. So there are a lot more skills in teaching. So that's something that you might want to draw upon.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And what I've just heard you describing is almost like a production house, whereby it's almost like a team of people dedicated towards creating a new age syllabus to make it more fun for students out there. So yeah, it's not only as a school, as an entity to teach students, but also as a entity to really create relevant contents and fun contents for teachers and also students as well.
Yeah, actually, maybe this is something that, because you asked us what are the initiatives, I've got one more initiative, which is actually, we have a lot of all these odd contents that make the learning different, right? And we're actually in the process of recording them so that it's available to people around the world. Yeah. So we'll update you when that comes along, because right now we're looking at the platform to put it on.
Okay, and one thing that I really like to mention over here is that recently I saw that that there is an award that your organization has currently won. It's sort of like coming from a Cambridge award in terms of a world-class education. So I guess it's quite a prestigious award over there. And would you be able to tell us more about this award? Yeah.
Okay, it's more recognition, because in 2013 I got a call from UK, and I thought I was being scammed actually, so I was a bit cautious there. We were invited to be featured in the Cambridge University Student Union yearbook, and it is by invitation, and we were really proud, because we were like in this one little spot in Kuala Lumpur and they're over there, and how did they even find out about us, And the selection process was not an easy one. They actually scouted around the world, and the final shortlisted process goes through the lecturers in Cambridge U. And so the great thing is that as a Malaysian school, we've been featured in the yearbook 6 years in a row, And I remember two of the books that were really, it's very dear to us because in 2015, when we were featured under UNESCO celebrating its 70th anniversary. And we were only 1 out of 20 over schools selected from around the world, right?
Wow.
And the other one that was even a better highlight for us was the one in 2018. Cambridge was celebrating its 800th anniversary. Talk about tradition, right?
Mhm.
And we were featured when the book came to me. The first thing I flipped is where are we? And we were in the first chapter, world class. And there are only 8 schools selected around the world, and we were one of 8, 2 from Asia, 1 from China, and 1 us. 2 from Australia, 2 from Germany, and I think 1 from Europe and another from Middle East.
Wow.
So for so I don't know. I was just so darn proud, of my whole entire team, for getting us there. And they call us every year, and for the next 2 years as well. But with COVID and the lockdown, I think this year's is probably being postponed to next year.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And in that case, right, looking into the different sort of perspective in education, in comparison to different countries in the world, right? What could you share with us more about your perspective, being able to get exposure from internationally acclaimed education institutions? What sort of disparity that you really see in terms of the education perspective outside of Malaysia in comparison to what we currently have over in Malaysia? And what can we really do to really bridge any gap, if there's so, in bringing forth our education to the next level on that?
Okay, that the problems both sides, yeah. In the West, right, there's a lot more focus on the more human component. But then as Asians, we know that our math and sciences were better than them. Okay, better than them, and that's more on the result side. But if you look at innovations and all that, a lot of it was coming from the West. But now with China, that's a whole different story altogether. And then the thing is actually one of East and West. And then in Asia, it's not just our country. It's a lot of focus on the academics and getting results and things like this. So actually a nice marry is to have both. Okay, in the West, you will see it when it gets to year 10 and year 11. You will, and even in the universities, you don't find so many of the Westerners actually in the STEM degrees. And so therefore the question then is, if it worked, what they were doing worked in primary and early, the lower sec, local secondary worked, then
Right.
you will have a lot more actually in the science courses as well. But then because you don't have, then there's a break somewhere. They have to figure that break, and the break is the academic rigor. So they need to bring you have to bring both together. So that was what we set out to do. We couldn't go completely west. We had to bring the East in. And then when we did the East, we had to bring the West in because we believe very strongly in the kids really growing their human values and having fun and being more positive in the way they are dealt with where education is concerned. Yeah, so it was like a whole big thing that we had. But we started this a long time ago, so we have had a lot more time to get this out there,
Right.
Does that help?
Yeah, and also, so we are talking about the bridging the gap of education, right? And that definitely would lead us on to the question whereby we talk about the future in education. A lot of buzzword that we're talking about industry 4.0, 21st century education, right? Our current education level, is it up to par in bringing forth the proper education for our students, preparing them for? So I guess the more important question it will
How
be.
blunt do you want me to be? How blunt do you want me to be?
Yeah, I guess the truth would definitely help in that case. Yeah. And I guess more importantly is that what can we as educators and probably as parents, what are the things that we can actually do to really prepare our child to really face the challenges that is about to come forth, including the including what we are currently already facing right now during the COVID period. Yeah.
Okay. This one, parents, educators, the computer. We talk about education 4.0. Most countries are focusing on the IT skills. Okay. You know what? The IT skills is an absolute necessity. So if people don't believe in the kids having access to it, we are actually doing the kids a disservice. What parents need to learn is how to control the use of the devices. Okay, but they need to have access to it. Otherwise, it's very hard for our children to compete with the world out there. But a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that IR 4.0 is actually about getting them technical skills. You know, by the time your kids get the technical skills for real, you
Right.
know, the technical skills are already obsolete.
Right.
You know, so you have to actually, we decided to focus on the human component. So IR 4.0 is about us making sure we're getting the education 4.0 out there, which is about focusing on the human component. All right, because you cannot compete with AI. Your kids cannot compete with robotics. Okay, but they need to know how to conceptualize what is beyond robotics.
Right.
And that is a whole different ball game, and it's up here. And you
Right.
have to really build, work on the kids so that you know all the the lines crossing the two brains, you know, are actually built. And the way to build the connectivity between the two brains is to do different things, to
Right.
try new things,
Right.
to do creative stuff. When they play the
Okay.
piano,
Mhm.
when they do dance, the right hand, left hand, when they play sports, that
Right.
is where the connectivity happens.
Right.
Okay, this is
Okay.
something a lot of people are not aware of. Yeah, and you also have to be aware whatever you're preparing the kids for. It's lots of schools are doing preparing the kids for certainty. One thing you can be certain about the future is that it is uncertain and it's constantly changing. Ask yourself this question: which education system right now is teaching your kids for uncertainty?
Right. Mm. Okay, this is a very good question. Which form of education is teaching your kids to face up to uncertainty and the unknown out there, right?
Mm.
And yeah, is that the blunt answer that you were you were
Yes.
preparing? Okay, right.
So
And
this
in a
one,
way, yeah,
yeah.
and we let's say if I'm as a parent, right, I guess I'm seeing a lot of my parents going through the hassle of finding out the best program out there. Okay, there's public speaking, and then there's music, there's arts, and all those type of extracurricular activity programs out there. So in preparing their children, so of course their intention is to really bring their children to the level, hopefully to be able to cope with the challenges in the future. However, are these necessarily the correct strategy or the proper strategy to really hone successful children in 2020 right now as we're talking? Is that the current strategy that should be going forth for parents with their children?
Okay, this is a tough one too because I have to set context. Yeah, it, the learning cannot be uh, ugly.
Right.
The process, right? And if parents can focus on two things, uh, not to worry about the outcomes, but focus on the process, okay? And the fact that your child is working hard at it, so focus on the behavior and the process. You know, give your kids encouragement if you can see them really working hard at it. And if they feel discouraged by it, because it can be music, it can be, you know, like not everybody wants to play the piano, but a lot of people may want to sit down and work up a sweat with a drum set. Okay, so there are many other ways of getting the same skills, but to get them interested in the first place. If you don't have access to drum sets, nowadays you can find apps online where you can have access to 150 different instruments and sounds, and you can literally create music out of it. Get them to play around with that, you know. So that is critical. The fact that they are engaged. Even if sometimes you watch them play computer games, and they really don't give up on it, right? That takes a lot of tenacity. And just by encouraging them and saying, you know, I really see tenacity there. You know, yeah, you might want to control the timing, but doesn't stop you from commending them on the tenacity. You see, and or if they like playing basketball, they'll find ways to just play it, whether you like it or not as a parent, you know. And the fact that they're taking that physical sports very seriously, they're having fun, no doubt, and that they take the initiative to actually be there with their friends, it come from that space, you know, and then work it so that they get to go, but you know they're also working at home. But it really is very hard to compete these two things, compete basketball with sitting down and studying from a boring textbook.
Yeah.
So you might want to commend them when they actually sit down and study, rather than say, are you sure you really study? Yeah, the results don't show. Okay, so focus on the process and the behavior, the
Right.
results. And
Right.
it is hard when they get to the secondary levels. A lot of parents expect them to keep up with A's. The work is not easy. They're going to falter, you know. They're not going to be able to bring home A's for you for every subject. What you want to do is not to make them feel lousy. If you really see them working, yeah. And a lot of the students, they tell me, no point telling my parents because they don't believe me anyway. It's
Right.
also partly the kids' fault because when they work, the parents don't see. And when parents see, they are not working, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right. And of course, I was in fact this morning I was actually in a judging session whereby it's sort of like a public speaking competition to share with us what are the kids' role models. So these are primary school students, 11 years old. And I was surprised that one of the students actually told us that his role model is to actually become a gamer, a professional gamer, right? And what he intends to do is to really play games and to hone the skills of playing that particular game in order to represent Malaysia in the international level. So there's such a diversity in terms of how a kid can really grow themselves and how the direction has been absurd. If coming from my perspective, right? Wow, you can actually become a gamer right now. Uh, in my days, it's almost like an instant caning session or grounding session by the parents, right? So as a parent, right, in navigating through such a diverse amount of direction that your kid can actually go off in life, right? As a teacher, as how would you provide a proper guidance for students in order for them to really live out the best life that they can actually possibly have in this scenario?
Okay, this is one for parents, yeah, because a lot of parents, the minute the kids are not on their books, yeah, the parents say that they're wasting their time. Yeah, I see that a lot. But when do the kids get off from the book, right? So it's actually the things that they do outside of their studies that actually they might pursue for the rest of their lives. Gaming is actually a multi-billion-dollar business. Okay,
Right.
and even in the business alone, and it's going to be in the Olympic Games in 2024. So if parents are serious about like Nicole David doing playing squash, you know how much effort came from the parents just to support the daughter to get to that level. If your kids want to become a gamer, there's about how much effort you have to put in, you know. But there's a lot of it requires a lot of support from parents. But it is a multi-billion-dollar business, okay?
Right.
And even the companies that deal with it, it's good. It's over the next 5 years. It's tough for them to hire enough people to even work for them. So
Right.
in that business alone, there will be a shortage of staffing in the industry alone. So just to put it out there, in case you're wondering if the kids are wasting their time.
Right. So as a parent, do they support fully in terms of okay, my kid wants to run it this way, let's give them all the support there is, or probably the there's a different strategy on how an educator and a parent should actually take upon with regards to this?
Okay, the thing is that two things. Get the kids to really enjoy spending time with you. All right. That's something that you want to build up so that they don't immerse themselves in games, because then they can lose themselves there, because it's so much more fun than spending time with the parents, right? So the first thing you want to do is make sure that spending time with you is something that the kids are going to enjoy doing. All right. Then only then is it easier for you to maneuver and get them off the game. When you get them off the game, make sure that you're not getting them off to do the boring stuff of studying. Okay, getting them off means doing something that's a little more fun than even the games with you, you know. So those are some things that little uh, things that parents may need to be aware of. The minute you ask them to get off the game to do the studies, it's not going to happen. Then studies is a different thing, a different ball game, but not to get off the game to study. It's too big a difference. Yeah, and it is the book's fault because it's very boring. Okay.
Right.
Then the other one, of course, is that give and take. Yeah, that win-win. And so if they want this from you, then what are they willing to give you? So if they want the hours in the game, then they have to give you the hours studying. Yeah.
Right. And so forth. What's your take, right, in terms of allowing access for students to get access to internet, right, and the web out there? Because when we're talking about connecting education to the real world, right, internet is so called like the gatekeeper for them to go to understand and to sort of like get an idea of what the real world is like, right? So in that form, right, how does technology in terms of the World Wide Web, right, internet, play a key part in allowing students to gain access to knowledge or information or education in that part for themselves? And what's your take in allowing students to gain access to get their hands in control with internet? Yeah.
Okay, parents, the kids are learning a lot, whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
from the internet, right? The one thing that you don't want them to do is to shut you out. Okay, for their safety, you don't want them to shut you out, and therefore, you might need to spend time to get into their world, meaning to have a better understanding. And it's not by force; it's about being interested. Let them show you the kind of things they're watching, and then they can see that, oh, you're really interested. Then you have a clearer idea what it is that they're navigating around, you know. And then that is it. And if you don't show judgment as to who their friends are and what they're watching, then there are more likelihood of them allowing you to be a part of that world. It's very easy for your kids to shut you out. So easy, the press of a couple of buttons. All they need to do as well is to shift to another platform that parents are not aware of, you know, like TikTok for one. As parents get to know Facebook and all that, and they don't want to be there anymore because the parents are there, they can see everything the kids are doing, so they move on to something else, and they'll be very quick, you know. So you don't want them to shut you out. Yeah. And the way to do that is, you know, just chatting with them and find out. And when they show you things, even if sometimes you have to grit your teeth, you know, like it just not like go into the negative and say, okay, that's interesting, you know. And if it's because sometimes it's just funny and silly at the same time, and parents think it's a waste of time. Yeah, but it's more about seeing what tickles their bones, you know, and just go from there without judgment. Then they'll keep you in the loop, and then you will because the dangers, there are a lot of dangers on the internet, but keeping them from it is not. They're gonna find ways to get in. Yeah, so it's better for you to be part of their world than completely shut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, just to share with teacher Anne as well, I was in one of the school, and these are primary school students, 11 and 12 years old. And when I was going through some of the activities over there, the students actually told me that, hey, that student over there, he's a YouTuber. He edits his own video, he creates his own content, he designs his own poster and website. And I'm finding out is that, 11-year-old student, how did you manage to learn all of this? And he's saying, I learned all of it from YouTube. And I asked them, did anyone guide you in terms of the softwares and the skills and everything? No, everything I learned from YouTube and actually did it on my own. So you can really see the potential of learning if students are given access to the internet. And I'm not sure if this luxury of being able to allow students to get access to internet is something that your school or your students are being given privilege to in terms of the process of learning.
Yeah, they are. We allow them to bring their phones and their devices to the school. The primary kids, they have to lock it away when school begins. And more because we will provide them with the iPads for class use so that we know what's been downloaded there, more for their
Right.
safety purposes. But they are allowed to bring their devices and they have access to it during break and after school. The secondary students, they have access to their phone the entire day, and they do a lot of research work, and sometimes they, instead of taking notes nowadays, it's a snapshot. And people
Right.
think that they need to copy. No, not really, because even us, when we go attend the talks and all that, we'll just do a snapshot. And we allow that because it saves a lot of time. So the kids, and then we work on actually teaching them the protocol of having a phone. And kids being kids, they will push the boundaries. And that's why we are there to push back if they cross over the boundaries too far, and or we have to guide them. And some will not listen, and therefore the privileges have to be taken away. But you don't punish all because of a few, you know, because it is not in their favor for us to actually ban devices in school, because the world is moving too fast, way too fast,
Right.
to actually not allow them access to the. And then our kids have been working fine with the phones and the devices and all that. We generally don't have major issues. Yeah, but like little things where they'll push the boundaries and so on. Yeah, but
Right.
that's the nature of young people anyway.
Okay. Right. So coming in, as we 2 hours since we have this discussion over here. So final few questions for teacher and any final conclusions with regards towards education and connecting it to the real world as well, with regards to what we have been discussing on the on the whole 2 hour session over here. Conclusions from teacher and yeah.
Okay. Okay. The main thing is that all of us as educators, our heart is for the kids, and our job, it's a really tough one because we don't even know when the kids graduate. Like if you're teaching standard five kids, for instance, yeah, they'll be graduating at least another 10 years down the road. You don't even know what that's even looking like. So it's really, really hard. So the only thing you can do is to look at whatever you're doing, is this real? Yeah. The one thing I know for sure is like even little things like making them copy their work, copy homework, copying notes. Is this real? You know, when they're doing math, is it real? How do you make it real?
Right.
Telling them that they're going to need it for life, it's not going to work. How do you make it real for them? You know, and so these are real things that, and then when you connect with them, um, are they going to? I'm not talking about giving. I have very strong boundaries with my students. All right, but at the same time, when I deal with them, it's more from a human aspect. So then, are they happy to see me? Am I happy to see them? That is real. Okay, and it's all it takes to make those changes. Yeah. So if they're not happy to see you, then what is it that I'm not doing? What am I not connecting with them on? What is it that's not relevant to them? You might want to
Right.
figure that out. Yeah. Sometimes it's just the way we deal with them, and if you just change that, you can change the whole approach to how they feel about learning in your class. So that's what I mean by real. Because dealing with kids, I love dealing with them because they give you real time feedback.
Right.
If they don't like you, they don't hide it. They can get mad at you, but it doesn't mean they don't like you. All right, but that's mad and not liking the person at all. Yeah, you can tell if you're doing something like teaching and using this particular method. You can tell if they're completely disconnected. The feedback is immediate. And out
Right.
in the world, when you run a business or you're doing anything, feedback is key in order for you to be able to provide your customers with what they want or what works best for them, you know.
Right.
Yeah, so I learned to do that with the kids, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I guess speaking of feedback, right? Hopefully there'll be a platform whereby we could actually survey students, primary and secondary schools in Malaysia, to find out if they how do they really feel about the education that they are being provided currently in school, and there'll be a very interesting findings from there, right? And yeah, so yeah, once again,
I'll leave
thank you
that
so much.
to you.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to you because you probably will be able to do that very well. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, so end of the day, I would like to thank Teacher Anne for her time to come in into the Edu-Chat series over here. And for those of you who love what Teacher Anne has been sharing during the night today, Teacher Anne will be sharing also during our Edu Summit 2020 Series 2, where she will be sharing with us all about how to create, nurture, and develop young entrepreneurs in school. Okay, so for parents and teachers out there, this seems like a very interesting topic that we are about to embark on. So, teacher, and a sneak preview on what you're about to share during the Edu Summit with regards to developing young entrepreneurs in school. Just a sneak preview. Let's not give out the entire storyline out there.
Okay, I guess it will be a little bit. It's mindset that's key. Okay, so you want to get the kids to thinking like one, the mindset, and that's what I can share with you right now. We'll kind of give you a better idea of what that looks like next week. Okay.
Right. So in that case, yeah, so for those of you who wants to find out how you can really develop your child to become a future entrepreneur, so what are the methods, what are the activities and the mindset of how you can really develop them. So please tune in on next Sunday. So teacher and session will be in the morning session, right? So please do join us in the Education Summit. So teacher Anne, it has been a pleasure having you in the Edu-Chat series, and wow, I learned a tremendous lot in terms of what you have been sharing over here. Lots to digest. Final one is that if any of the teachers out there would like to find out more about your work, your organization's initiatives, where can they really find you from?
I guess I have my own Facebook, Teacher and Tham, and
Okay.
we're there to kind of give people feedback as to, and because I started doing this, and because parents wanted to know more how to handle their kids, and they have a lot of, like say for instance, this entrepreneur thing. I guess one of the things that I'll be talking about is why it's so critical. Governments around the world, MOEs around the world, all of them are looking at entrepreneurship. You know, the ministers of the economics of the country, businesses in the country, industries, all of them know it's important. So, but why? That's the other thing I will help you understand. So yeah, I do have a Facebook, Teacher and Tham. So check it out and see if there are more things that you can pick up from there that would help you. Thank you so
Right.
much.
Okay. Yeah, I guess they have shared in the comments down there. So do check out Teacher Anne's Facebook as well as all of her links that we have just shared on the comments down there. And yeah, Teacher Anne, thank you so much again for joining in the Edu-Chat series. I wish you all the best of luck, and I hope to see you next week. And also, I'm thrilled to see what new activities and initiatives on education that you're about to bring forth for the schools in Malaysia, right?
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you
Okay.
very much, everybody, for staying tuned. It's 2 hours, but thank you very much.
Right.
Hope it's
Okay.
brought you value. Okay.
Right. So reluctantly, we have to send off Teacher Anne. Good night and take care, Teacher Anne.
Thank you, Jay. Good night.
Thank you. All right, so that was Teacher Anne. Wow, speaking to her is almost like riding on a speeding bullet. So there's a lot of information and as well as a lot of insightful, fundamental truths and as well as strategies on education. So towards my entire journey in running through education summits, right? There have been a lot of educators out there that have proposed a lot of very different education strategies and ideas during our education summit. And Teacher N is one of those characters or educators that has put on, I could say, dedicated her entire life in bringing forth so much of different, I would say, effective and also exciting initiatives on education. So me, myself, I'm a huge fan of educators like this that is willing to bring in innovation and a different perspective on education. And that is what I believe that how we could actually advance forth education, especially in Malaysia, as well as in our future generations benefit as well, right? So I hope that those of you that are watching right now and also will be watching in the offline session, I hope that it has been a very insightful session for all of you. So please do check out Teacher Anne's website as well as all of her links. And I believe that I forgot to mention that in her Facebook page, during MCO, she has been doing sort of like a series, a Facebook series, right? All about parenting, about education. Please do check it out. I find it very amusing. It's a very fun and a very engaging conversation on education and parenting, right? And please do check out your parent and teachers as well. All right. So final sneak preview, also a little bit of advertisement for next week's session. I believe that all of you who are in the Education Summit Facebook group, it's actually a private group, right? You're aware that we are about to run, backed by popular demand, we will be having our Education Summit Series 2, where we will have 16 new speakers, including Teacher Anne, that will be sharing with teachers and educators on education solutions, right? And a little bit on the background of the topics that we will be discussing. It's going to be focusing on 3 main topics, right? So the first one will be in terms of mental well-being education. So why mental well-being education is because during MCO, we've actually received a lot of feedbacks from teachers and parents out there that are telling us that, hey, my children during MCO period, they have been facing with a lot of stress in terms of homework and being able to cope with the progress on education, including teachers and parents as well. So we thought that the mental well-being is kind of a very important subject that I wish that a lot of parents and teachers are able to take notice of and to be aware on some of the things to really prevent, in order to prevent your child or even you yourself to face burnout, right? And so we'll be talking more about that in terms of mental well-being. And also a very important subject, during MCO, we have been talking about education for the masses in Malaysia. But what about education for the special needs community, right? I'm talking about the visually impaired. What about the autistic children, those who have learning disabilities? So what about them, right? So we will be having a panel of educators that are expert in all of this special education learning background that will be sharing during Education Summit as well. So if you have any parents or any teachers out there that are currently dealing and working with a special needs community, please do share this link out there so that they may be able to join in and have a look at the session over here. And finally, of course, for teacher ends, there'll be the third category, which is the advancement on education. And we'll be talking more about different education strategies, including creativity, teacher ends, entrepreneurship education. We'll be talking more about all the advancement in terms of the different education approach. We will be having a speaker that will be talking about the Reggio Emilia education approach. A lot of very interesting education topics are bound to happen in the Education Summit 2020 Series 2, and how you can get access towards all of the contents over here next week. Just log in into edusummit.co, which is edusummit.co, right? And you should be able to register yourself and get access free, right? All of these programs are free. All of the speakers actually volunteered their time to share with all of the teachers out there and parents out there as well, right? So definitely I'll check you out next week. So we are going to have another marathon session, right? So hope to see all of you guys there. It's now 10:40, and I would like to wish all of you a happy weekend, an awesome weekend. I will see you soon next week in our Education Summit Series 2, right? So good night, everyone, and I wish for all the best for you teachers and parents out there, and take care.